Dirty Birds, what's up? Welcome to another edition of Falcons Final Whistle presented by Zaxby's. I'm your host, Will McFadden. I'm joined by Tori, McElhaney, and Amna, Subhan, who is filling in for Taryn Walk for one more day. Guys, we had our first training camp practice in front of fans. It was out at Secondary High School in Buford. Saturday night lights, not Friday night lights, but man, the energy was palpable. The play, I thought, was pretty good. Tori, what was your takeaway from today?
It was everything that I feel like I've been missing in training camp. You know, the first day we talked about kind of how routine it felt, how very boring it felt, to bring us back full circle to the word that I have used that has now had everyone call me out on using the word boring. And then day two, things picked up a little bit more. We said it looked more like a training camp practice. And then we get to today, or tonight, I should say, and the fans are there, cheerleaders are there, a band's playing. Kirk Cousins is hitting Kyle Pitts for a 40-yard gain. I mean, it had a little bit of everything. We saw our first interception of camp. I personally was just... I said this. I was joking around. I was talking to Matt Haley, and who's one of our comms reps, and we were walking around kind of the track, watching everybody do individuals, and and they're getting ready for 11-on-11, and I just look at him, and I just like, this is what it's supposed to feel like. I was like, I feel so excited. I feel at home. Like y'all know, my dad was a high school football coach, so that's kind of where I fell in love with the game, was on a high school football field. And so that was just something that as we're walking around the track and as we're kind of standing there and they're doing 11-on-11 stuff, it was just very like, I was like, this is how it's supposed to feel. This is the excitement that they're supposed to be during this point in time in training camp. And a lot of it was due to the fans and to the people who did say hi. Thanks. It was great seeing you guys, and thank you for...
Yeah, that one guy was like, Tori,
I know.
great.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I heard that. Tori McElhaney.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that. I promise it kind of caught me off guard, so if I looked a little like deer in headlights, don't mind me. But it was such a good evening. Saw a lot of really cool play, which I know we'll get more into that, and but I think just overall, it was really, really nice to get out there. And let me just say this. There is no one who draws a crowd quite like Bijan Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
The fans that were in attendance, and if you were there, I'm sure you were one of the many that kind of stood in line, waited for a long time to get something signed by Bijan, or kids yelling at Bijan. There were the people who brought like signs for Jesse and Bijan. I mean, it was again, I'm reiterating, but it was everything that you would hope that it would have been.
Yeah. And speaking of Bijan, like, it created like such an interesting atmosphere that we don't typically see like on the practice field here where the fans are up on the hill. Mm-hmm. Like, there was, some kids on the sideline and they're just trying to get Bijan's attention. He turns around and he waves and they just like go berserk. And then a minute later he finds some free time and he goes over and shakes their hands and they're just going crazy. So it was just such a fun atmosphere. And what I took away from it, like you were talking about growing up on the football field, I was taken back to covering high school football in the short amount of time that I did. But I was like, I'm not used to seeing this big of bodies on a football sideline. I'm like, this is very interesting.
Though in Buford, Georgia, they are pretty big bodies.
That is very true. That is very true. I'm used to my, not to be too hard on my Arizona, but like, sorry, Braylon Trice.
Yeah, Braylon Trice from Arizona.
It's different out here in Georgia.
It is. High school football, it's a different beast entirely.
You are right, though, about like, because I too covered high school football. I remember going to Sprayberry High School. Trace Sermon, who spent some time in the league, was at Oklahoma for a while and was with the 49ers, I believe. He may still be. But he was their running back there. And you're right. It's just the people in the stands, the music playing, the kind of like the weird chatter that you do pick up from like groups of random 8th graders who are just like walking around, right? Like it's a very real experience, but Bijan is the perfect type of athlete for this environment because there is like a Steph Curry quality to him where he is so likable, he's so affable, but he's so like good in the cool kind of way.
Yeah.
Right? Like his style of play is the type of play that you would try to emulate out in the backyard like I did as a kid with Michael Vick, right?
Yeah.
You're just like...
How close did you get to
it was
like
right there.
Right?
I mean, honestly,
yeah.
like if Jim Mora had just come to scout me in my backyard...
He would have been like, wow.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I mean, they would have traded Matt Schaub way sooner.
That's great.
But yeah, I mean, he was really sharp. He's been sharp, I mean, all camp. It's just hard, like, we haven't talked a lot about, I think, Bijan, because... it is really like still 50%.
Yep.
It's walkthroughs, and Bijan should look amazing in all of that because there's not tackling. So we will touch on Bijan, I'm sure, a lot more as camp continues.
He did have a little spin move that got the fans going. That was fun.
Yeah,
But yeah, with no tackling, it's like, okay, they're doing a run, but it doesn't really mean much at this point.
When it comes to Bijan, like Bijan's at his best when he's making people miss, and it's really hard to make people miss when they're kind of just like running up and like
when they're
bumping
just
you.
tapping you on the helmet.
Right.
And also I thought, I mean, the way that his balance was especially, I feel like, on display today, just with not being on grass and on turf, and I know that can be a little bit of a trickier situation for some athletes, but I thought he handled it like super well, and his balance is just incredible and second to none. But was there anybody else, Tori, who kind of like stood out to you today, just maybe that we haven't talked about so far in camp?
Well, we have kind of touched on Kyle Pitts, but not a whole lot.
It's been more Kirk-centric,
It's been
I feel
very
like.
Kirk-centric. We talked yesterday. We were big on receivers yesterday, talking about Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, Rondale Moore. We didn't really talk that much about Kyle. We had a little bit of snippet about Kyle, but today was the day that you saw Kyle Pitts be Kyle Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
It was Kyle Pitts to the oomph degree.
Yeah.
It really was, like, because I'm watching him, and Will, I know you wrote about Kyle, and you really zeroed in on what his day looked like and how the connection with him and Kirk was looking, and how confident Kyle was looking. But you really and I was really glad the fans got to see truly how healthy Kyle Pitts is. That was something that, as he's kind of running along the sidelines, and as the fans are seeing him make these catches, and it was Kyle Pitts at 100%.
Yeah.
And there's something special about Kyle Pitts at 100%. It's why you draft him number 4 overall. It's why he has the rookie year that he has. Circumstances have been what they've been. It has been a dead horse that we have just beat over and over and over again. Yeah. But I'm going to say it again, because tonight you really got to see Kyle Pitts put on a show. And even in the moments where there was it was very, very early on in the 11-on-11 portion of practice, and Kirk just kind of lets one rip down the sidelines, and it was perfectly placed, just right in Kyle's hands, and he kind of bobbled it, and the ball fell incomplete. And Will, you actually saw Kirk go over to Kyle, right?
It wasn't anything major, it was just kind of like a, hey, tap on the shoulder pad, while Kyle was like talking to some teammates and his tight ends coach, and kind of re-breaking down. But it's still meaningful, right? Like, that's a small gesture that you would, honestly, I'd be more shocked if like a veteran quarterback or leader didn't do something like that.
Right.
But still, every little bit of those gestures counts when you're strengthening the relationship. It's the stuff Matt Ryan did even when he was, a third-year guy in the league, and he has Tony Gonzalez, a future Hall of Famer. Like, they'll sometimes show those clips when they're doing like big Falcons history moments or whatever on the air, and you'll see Matt Ryan come over and start like just yelling at like Tony Gonzalez, because that's kind of what it takes. This was the opposite. This was supportive, but you still like to see the veteran signal caller kind of set the tone in that way. And
they didn't miss each other for the rest of the afternoon.
No.
It was like 4 or 5 catches after that. And
the amount of times I wrote Kirk to KP.
Right, yeah,
like,
I did too. It was like
notebook.
Kirk-KP a lot in the notebook today. And Kirk, I did the numbers. I crunched the numbers a little bit, because and I'll take this with a grain of salt, everyone. I say these are the rough numbers, but Kirk Cousins was looking...
this is great.
As advertised, as accurate as you expect when you're paying someone this kind of money to come and be your starting quarterback. According to what I was looking at, so these are my notes. So
according to TFF,
Tori Football Focus, the Kirk Cousins ended his day 15 of 17 through the air, with 1 lone incompletion, which was what we consider to be the Pitts drop. Now,
And an asterisk.
And an asterisk between the other incompletion, because it technically, here's the thing, there's a little discrepancy as the timing of this, because Troy Anderson did have an interception on Kirk Cousins. However, from where I was, I thought that the officials had blown the ball dead because Grady Jarrett was basically in the backfield. and then Kirk let it go. So I don't know. The defense thought that Troy Anderson got the interception fair and square. Offense was like, it was a dead play. It was down. He was down. It didn't count. So the 15-17, it could be really, really close to being 15-16.
I don't think they would have called a play dead in a real game, right? So
Grady would have had to sack him full
yes,
send.
And
yeah.
I think Kirk would have, he's not going to throw out of a sack necessarily because you don't want to ever do that, but I would say we give it to the defense on this one, right? Because, the offense is going to want to extend a play. They're going to want to try to make a play, and it was a great jump by Troy Anderson. So, let's build a little hype for the defense.
Right? Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the offense, and something that I kind of wanted to talk about with this defense was the way that things broke out in the first part of the 11-on-11s was that it was the first team offense against the second team defense and the second team offense against the first team defense.
Yes.
The first team defense was making life very difficult for Michael Penix Jr., which
I felt for him.
Right? It's exactly what you want.
Yeah.
It's exactly
what he wants too.
Exactly. You talked to him. You asked him a really great question yesterday about that as well.
Yeah. And we talked about this yesterday. Time is weird. But yeah, he was saying he wants to go against those guys. So he didn't look as sharp as a Kirk Cousins did. And I mean, rookie
year. Yeah.
That's the whole thing. But he's going to learn a lot from these reps.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because whereas Kirk, I felt like, was very clean, accurate, decisive, not saying that Michael Penix wasn't, but he was having to work in a lot of dirtier pockets. There was a lot of times, there's a few times, especially early, where the pocket was collapsing around him. I have pocket collapse in about 4 or 5 points in my notebook. And that's what this defensive front should be doing. Even in this, no tackling, they're just going kind of 50-60%. But even in that, it's they were making it difficult on Michael Penix Jr. It was in the secondary was doing a good job covering up their guys. There was a couple times where I was like, that probably would have been a coverage sack. The first team defense, I felt kind of redeemed themselves a little bit from the day 2 that we saw, where it felt like the offense was just carving them up.
Yeah, I did like what I saw from the defense, but I guess I'll be the little stick in the mud and be that's what you expect when you're going against the second team offensive line and you've got your first team defense kind of out there. But I know there was something that you noticed with Kaden Elliss.
Yeah.
That I personally, that's what really gets me excited. When you're seeing the pocket collapse and all of that, but there's so many, again, asterisks to this time of year. Scheme stuff. When you see players in certain positions, that I think is going to translate much more to Sundays. So what did you observe about Kaden Elliss today?
Yeah, so Kaden Elliss, there were a few times where, we've been talking about this inside linebacker lineup and what a starting group will look like. Is it going to be Kaden Elliss and Nate Landman like it was last year? Is Troy Anderson going to find his way back into a starting spot? And while they all were rotating in and out, there were a few times where it was very obvious that the Falcons were prioritizing Kaden Ellis's ability as a pass rusher. He had his hand in the ground a couple times. He was up there right alongside those defensive tackles in between a couple gaps, coming off the edge. I mean, they were kind of utilizing him in a way that, we were talking about this as we were walking off the field, where it's that was kind of Kaden Ellis's bread and butter when he was with New Orleans. Mm-hmm. That final year that he was with the Saints, that's kind of how they used him. They used him honestly as a pass rusher. That was what he did. They had these certain looks and packages for him in that regard. Well, now we're getting to see a little bit of that with the Falcons, and whereas we didn't necessarily see a whole lot of that last year, but again, like we talked about, was probably by nature. It was probably because of the fact that Troy Anderson got hurt so early in the season, and you bring in Nate Landman, who, let's be honest, very unproven. No one really knew kind of how things were going to go in terms of depth, so you really had to I feel like the previous defensive staff probably felt like the best thing they could do is just to keep Nate and Kaden kind of in line together. Figure it out. Caden's got the green dot. It's fine. Like, we won't try and do anything too complicated with them. But now that Nate Landman has the experience that he has, he's proven as he is. Troy Anderson's getting back to fully healthy. He is back to fully healthy. I really think that this opens up an avenue for Kaden Elliss to get back to something that I personally think he, one, thrives in, but also, two, there is evidence of production in.
Yeah, and Amna, I mean, I asked Raheem Morris he spoke before the practice started, and I was like, is this an exciting challenge for three guys in kind of normally two spots, right? Now, I didn't say two spots because I don't know what Raheem has cooked up. Like, I think that if we're talking Kaden Elliss, hand in the dirt, are there some packages where you do have all three of your inside linebackers on the field at the same time? But you know, typically it's 3 for 2 spots. Is that an exciting challenge for you, or do you already have kind of a sense in mind for how their skill set is going to mesh together? You know, I just kind of think that when we talk about the pass rush, right, like it's going to come from a variety of different areas. But who on this defensive line really has you excited?
That's a good question. On this defensive line, I think, you know, I had to go back and JSW.
James Smith.
The way that we keep seeing him pop up, and every time I see the ones go, I'm like, who's on this line? Who's starting up front? And obviously we haven't seen Grady that much up there as he's, you know, ramping things up. But I'm curious, you guys were able to talk to him. Well, what was those conversations like?
He actually didn't go today. So he'll go tomorrow. So we will get the chance to talk to him. But no, I mean, that is definitely like one of the players I'm most excited to hear from because it's such a mystery.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like I haven't really talked to him all that much.
I don't know much about him.
To be completely honest, I didn't necessarily feel like a super strong reason to in OTAs. Like, just to be frank, like I didn't know that much about him. He was a free agency signing, kind of in that second wave, not even in kind of an early March signing or mid-March signing. So, and
did you hear Raheem refer to him as an outside linebacker before?
Yeah.
That kind of, like, I didn't know if he was in that role or not. I mean, I guess he is,
works
but then
with
like,
them.
Right, but then,
I've seen him.
Yeah, he's with Arnold Ebiketie. He's with Lorenzo Carter. When they split up, the D tackles, because that was something that today I really loved doing, because for all of you at home, the way that things are set up at the Falcons facility, where the media has access to stand, the defensive tackles are on the complete opposite side. It's
always so hard to see them.
I cannot see them unless I have my glasses and or binoculars, and I usually don't bring either of them out with me to practice. But you don't really get to see them that often. And so today, because we were able to be on one field and we could walk around the track.
You took off immediately. It was so funny.
Yeah, I remember seeing, she just made as
soon as they split into Indy, I was speed walking to the defensive tackles because I needed to see them up close.
And we never saw her again.
No,
she just stayed over there.
I never saw her again until practice ended.
It's like I was just the whole time. I was just like, just put me in like Grady Jarrett's back pocket. I just want to see what they're doing, because then something that I really feel in this context of defensive line play, something that I found super interesting that I noted in our camp report was that actually seeing these guys all together as a collective group for the first time, honestly, because I can't see them at practice and when they're at the Falcons facility, it was so interesting to see the varying styles of body types that they have. And that was something that even talking to Jay Rogers, who's the Falcons defensive line coach, during the draft, and they're picking up, you know, Rukaroro, Brandon Dorless, like Zion, like he literally talked about how there were differing body types. But then when you see these new guys with David Onyemata, with Grady Jarrett, with Zach Harrison, who's, I think people forget how huge Zach Harrison is.
Yeah.
They have such differing styles of bodies across this defensive tackle group, and I think that bodes very well for them in terms of being able to show different looks along the defensive front. So that made me really excited.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that like pings in my brain thinking back to draft. When they drafted those guys, they all wanted versatility from them, and that they all could do multiple things and different things. So that'll be exciting to see how it all kind of plays out.
But there's versatility in a couple of different ways. And it's something I've been thinking a lot about recently because, when we talk about versatility, I think a lot of people use it in the context within like one or two schemes, right? Like you've got players who can do multiple things within the defense you want to run. But now I'm really starting to think that it's more about being able to run multiple defenses.
Yes, 100%.
Given however you want to change week to week. Like I love to cook, right? I hate when I go to my spice cabinet, my spice rack, and there's not the spice that I need because you can't substitute that stuff really well. Like the specific flavor that you need, the profile, if you don't have it, it's really hard to kind of substitute for that. So I think that what the Falcons have really done, especially on the defensive line, is just go with so many of those different types of bodies because really the defense you want to run, some people talk about back to front, but a lot of times it's front to back. And so what you've got up front, are they big bodies designed to stop the run? Well, then you can designate more of your scheme to maybe stopping the pass with some of those other guys because you trust the 3 or 4 big bodies up front to handle the run by themselves. Flip it around, right? You want to really maybe go attack the quarterback and you've got less resources on the back end, but you bring 5 or 6 juiced up guys just to go after the quarterback. Like there's a lot of different combinations that I think the Falcons can have defensively, and I that's the whole point.
Yeah. Well, just this conversation has me kind of thinking too about Richie Grant, and right, and we're talking about the defensive line, but the context of this spreads to the entire defensive unit of being versatile. I have said from go that people make way too much about when a defensive coordinator is asked about his base defense.
Yes.
That, to me, is so silly. Like, that people gravitate towards, someone says they're going to be a 3-4, 4-3, 4-2-5, whatever. Yeah. That, at this point in time in the evolution of this game, to me, doesn't matter because of the nature of how multiple defenses are at this level. Honestly, at the college level, you're seeing it even at, like, these big kids in Buford at the high school level, too.
Yeah.
So, I say this to also say that Raheem Morris was specifically asked about Richie Grant in his press conference before this practice started, and he made the comment about Richie in this when they do their dime package, kind of playing more of like a linebacker role. That matters when you're talking about what they're doing in the secondary, what they decide to deploy along the defensive front. This is all the same conversation.
It really is. I mean, it's going to be fascinating. I think Richie Grant is probably an early consensus for us as maybe like an under-the-radar kind of – he's already broken out because he's been a starter and stuff, but like maybe a bounce-back candidate because last year was a little bit rougher. But it's clear that this staff has identified his versatility as his kind of calling card, and I think that is something Dean Pease also identified that maybe last year – not that Ryan Nielsen can't identify that. He's a very smart coach. It's more what was the scheme really geared to like highlights. And I think this scheme is going to be geared to highlight more of Richie Grant's versatility as opposed to maybe some of that deep coverage that he was kind of caught in a little bit last year. I do want to wrap up with, so we've got one more practice on Sunday before the Falcons kind of close up their first 4-day block. Amna, is there anything you haven't seen yet that you were kind of coming into camp being like, all right, this is on my radar of stuff I'm just trying to keep an eye on that maybe you want to see on Sunday?
You know, I don't think we're going to see it, but I really am curious to see, you know, whenever that is in game or preseason or whatever, I want to see all three of them, Nate Landman, Troy Anderson, and Kaden Elliss all out there together.
I do too.
Yeah, and it's just always, like, also I just don't know who, like, is getting that nod ahead of each other, because sometimes I'll see like Nate's out there and as far as I can tell, like that's the first go with the ones and I'm like, oh cool, Nate's there, and then Troy's there, and then Troy and Nate are together and it's like, okay, this is like Raheem Morris said, it's an exciting challenge. So I don't think we're gonna see that tomorrow, but I'm excited when if and when we do ever see it.
What I am really, really wanting to see very, very soon, I want to see some dang 7-on-7s with
Give it to Tori.
or like even like let's just do some one-on-ones, DBs versus skill guys.
Yeah,
like,
those are always fun.
I want to see those so bad, and we have yet to see. I thought today was going to be the day. I thought about even asking Raheem, like, when are we going to see some
Can I
one-on-ones?
put in a request?
Yeah, can I put in a request that we see some one-on-one action, please, and thank you. And maybe like there is something like within the rules of like, you know, because those can get very physical, so maybe they're holding them back a little bit. But that's the part of camp that I love the most, and I just need to see Drake London, AJ Terrell. I need to see some like one-on-one matchups. Like,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting patiently, but
knows?
my
Maybe
patience is
tomorrow.
running thin. I want to see it.
Yeah, that and honestly, the tight ends running backs against the linebackers is such a sneaky
Yes.
underrated drill.
Yeah.
Where the wide receivers and corners are awesome, but like the safeties, linebackers, running backs, tight ends, those are really interesting as well. So yeah, I want to see the offensive line. You know, it was something I really tried to. Like, that's going to be more specifically when the pads come on,
Yep.
right? So I know I phrased it as Sunday. Sunday's probably going to be a lighter day, right? But when the pads come on, I've been trying to watch the offensive line just because I want to get a sense for like somebody like Caleb McGarry,
Yeah.
right? Like going into a big year, how is he looking? Matthew Bergeron, a player that a lot of people I think are really high on going into year 2. All right, what kind of strides has he made? It's just so hard to like get a sense for that right now, but that is maybe the next thing on my checklist where I'm like, once the pads come on, once we really get some trench play, I cannot wait to see what that consistency is really going to mean for Atlanta's run game and really how this offense is maybe going to utilize what is one of their best weapons in the offensive line. So that's kind of maybe the next thing around the corner for us to figure out. But before I wrap us up, is there anything else that either of y'all want to bring up?
I think we'd be remiss not to mention Clark Phillips, who did get an interception.
That
was a clear interception.
Yeah, that was a clear interception. He tracked Michael Penix Jr.'s eyes. He jumped the route. It was exactly. It was the first interception of camp. The first interception officially goes to Clark Phillips.
3 days in.
3 days in.
I can't tell if that's late or if that's early or
Well,
if that's about right on time.
They didn't throw the ball at all the first day, so
And that they threw it a lot the second day. It's just it wasn't finding any defenders.
exactly. Yeah.
That's great. In the spirit of fairness, I will say that Mike Hughes punched the ball
He
out.
did.
Yeah.
But I kind of thought, I was like, okay, that was another one that was there was a little discrepancy. We don't have replay. So
It
it's
was
like,
probably going to be an incompletion.
Right. That's what I thought.
He did then scoop and score and
Right.
do all that. But
well,
yeah.
when I was doing the breakdowns of the numbers, I put it as an incompletion.
Okay.
For Michael Penix.
That's fair.
So.
All right. So then score 1, Clark Phillips.
And maybe asterisk Troy Anderson.
Yeah, we will take note of all of that on Sunday and keep everybody informed on what is happening. We are about to wrap up this episode, but before we do, we have to get to Camp Champ. All right, it was in front of the fans. Did the fans sway you in any way on your thinking of Camp Champ by their reaction?
No. That couldn't have been any better.
Well, there you have it, people. Your opinion doesn't matter at all to Tori or
You know
Amna.
what? If that were to happen, then I would pick Jesse Bates because this fan had a really funny thing where he was trying to get Jesse's attention. He goes, "Tell him, Jesse, he ain't big enough." But no, mine is not Jesse Bates. Okay, carry on.
Who you got, Amna?
Okay, if I'm going first, then I got Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I
Especially
mean-
since those when he said targets are still coming, when he with the number stuff
Yeah.
that he kept number 8 and he made the joke that targets are still coming. They did.
Yeah, they did. They did today. So mine is a sleeper probably because I don't know how many people outside of maybe his own family was like, woo! But Kaden Elliss. I really enjoyed seeing how they were using him today. I know that's not going to be something that is super flashy or anything like that, but I don't want to promise. I don't want to overpromise, underdeliver. But I have a feeling that this is going to matter when we get into week, let's just say 8 of the season. So for me, my nomination is Kaden Elliss, but I would like to at least say that I am also voting for Kyle Pitts because he just he had the best day. He really did.
Okay, well, we can let Kaden Elliss be the week 8 camp champ,
Okay.
and we can make Kyle Pitts the
Honorary
day
mention.
3 camp champ
Yeah.
because he is my pick as well.
Yeah.
I wrote about him on the best thing I saw, so I got to stick with him here on camp champ. He just looks fast. He looks comfortable. He looks like he's in an offense that is making him the number one option on a lot of these routes. And more importantly, like when I saw Casey Washington run the clear out route, and then Kyle Pitts just came right behind him and there was nobody really in the vicinity, I know that the Falcons have been trying to do that with Drake London and Kyle Pitts over the last couple of years. I just don't know if that's Drake's best usage. And so when you're able to free Drake up and kind of bring in some help to really have that specialized just speed guy, it's going to, I've been saying it the last couple of days, like this offense feels very open. Taylor Heineke himself said it after practice. This is a fun offense to be a part of. It is very open. It's very creative. So
Good
Kyle
spacing.
Pitts, exactly. So Kyle Pitts is primed to benefit, and he did on Saturday. So Kyle Pitts, congratulations, your first camp champ win. We've got Grady Jarrett, Rondale Moore, Kyle Pitts.
Hey-o.
No doubles yet. No
doubles.
repeats.
No. We're still early. Got a lot of camp left.
So much camp left. So let's go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please like and subscribe if you can. We are kind of on video today. This show is going to go up on YouTube. We are not on camera, though, because it is late.
Yeah.
So we're just doing audio.
Currently
right now.
after 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
so everybody else has gone home. We're the only ones here.
Yeah, I've got a kid under 2, so that is way past my bedtime. I was up at...
We are the kid under 2.
It's way past Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr. bedtime. They're fast asleep over there.
They are in the dorms.
They are hitting the hay. So thank you guys again so much for listening. We will see you on Sunday. As always, today's show was presented by Zaxby's. That'll do it for us, and we will see you tomorrow.